Hello, friends. So I just received this in the mail, the issue of the New Scientist, March 23, and it says Unveiling Reality, how to wrap your head around the most mind-bending explanations of our universe. So I actually read it very carefully, and since you know that I'm always interested in reality, I want to share some of the insights from this article, which I partially agree with. It says, strange but true, theories of fundamental reality are inescapably weird, but that doesn't mean they're wrong, and we can all figure out how seriously to take them, says philosopher Eric Schwitzgebel. Eric Schwitzgebel. He is a philosopher at the University of California, and his latest book is The Weirdness of the World. So let me read just a few passages. Are there vastly many near duplicates of you? Reading vastly many near duplicates of this article in vastly many parallel universes. Is consciousness a fundamental property of all matter? Could reality be a computer simulation? Etc., etc. Then he goes on to, define various interpretations of quantum mechanics, and also Schrodinger's equation, etc. And he seems to side with the idea that, of course, he does say that all theories of quantum mechanics or all interpretations of quantum mechanics seem utterly preposterous, but they might, some of them, be true. And he seems to favor the many worlds theories or multiverse theories, which says there are infinite universes and infinite versions of you and me, and on and on. So he concludes that we await new empirical evidence to support or refute many worlds or panpsychism, and in the meantime we can delight in our ignorance. I do agree with the idea that we can delight in our ignorance, but I do not agree that any empirical evidence is a reflection of the real reality, because what we call empirical evidence is also a species-specific mode of knowing and experience, a snapshot of perceptual activity through refined instruments, which are extensions of human perception, and then an interpretation of that in the human mind. I think as a philosopher, he probably knows that. But let's go a little deeper. With some of my notes that I saved for this discussion. So I'll begin actually by sharing with you the idea that the world is not what we see or interpret, even through Schrodinger's equation. So I was looking at human perception once again. You know, that's my fascination. And particularly, how we interpret human perception and how it is only a partial reflection of what we think reality is. So first of all, let's look at our visual apparatus. And if you believe in the evolutionary model of biological evolution, the Darwinian model, then you'll find out something very interesting. The first thing you should know that there's a connection between bacterial genes and vertebral genes. I'm reading from my notes. The light-sensitive proteins in our ears share similarities with those found in ancient bacteria. Over time, these proteins were repurposed and elaborated upon during evolution, leading to the complex eyes we have today. So while Darwin didn't have the detailed genetic understanding we do now, his theory of natural selection absolutely agrees to eye evolution. Simple light detection could have offered a slight survival advantage, and mutations that improve this ability, like forming a cup to focus light in the back of your eyes, would have been favored. I wonder if this argument holds validity, because I wonder if genes are just symbolic knowledge. Genes themselves don't carry symbolic meaning, but they do hold the code for building structures and functions. Over centuries and countless generations, these genetic instructions can lead to organs like eyes that become sophisticated as they evolve in how they perceive the world. So here are some additional ideas that you might find interesting. Eyes have evolved independently multiple times throughout history, leading to the diverse eye types we see in different animal groups. The complexity of eyes can vary greatly. Some simple eyes can only detect light and dark, while others, like vertebrate eyes, can form detailed images and perceive color. There are variations in our sensory structures, so let's look at eye structure. The number and type of photoreceptors, rods and cones in the eye, determine which wavelengths of light a species can see. So as humans, we have 3 types of cones, allowing us to see colors red, green, and blue, along with their combinations. Birds have 4 cone types, including one for ultraviolet. This lets them see colors and patterns invisible to us. Mantis shrimp, I find this totally fascinating. The incredible creatures called mantis shrimp have up to 16 types of photoreceptors. Their complex visual system likely produces a far more nuanced interpretation of color than we could ever comprehend or even imagine. Look at our ear structure. The shape and mechanism within an animal's ear determine the range of sounds or frequencies it can hear. So dogs hear higher frequencies than humans, allowing them to detect sounds beyond our range. Bats utilize echolocation, producing high-frequency sounds and interpreting the returning echoes to navigate and hunt in darkness. Let's look at some of our other senses. Some snakes have heat-sensing pits that detect infrared radiation, effectively forming heat images of prey. Sharks have electroreceptors that allow them to detect the tiny electrical fields produced by other living things, aiding in hunting. The brain's role. Sensory input is just the start. The brain processes and interprets this raw data, constructing the individual's perception of reality. Attention. Different species prioritize different sensory inputs. A hawk's visual acuity for spotting prey far exceeds that of humans, while a dog's world is dominated by scent. Mental models. The brain's wiring shapes how a species experiences the world. A bat constructs a 3D spatial map from sound. A human wouldn't be able to process this information the same way. So, each species constructs its own reality based on its unique sensory abilities and how its brain processes the inputs. There's no single objective true reality we can all reference. Umwelt, I like this was a German word, Umwelt, I think it's German. Philosopher Jacob von Uexküll coined the term Umwelt. Um, this term is used to describe the self-centered world of an organism. Each species experiences its unique Umwelt, a subset of the totality of existence. Human limitations. If our reality is constructed by our senses, we are likely missing out on vast aspects of the universe that lie outside our perceptual range. I also looked up, in my notes, the idea of kaleidoscopic vision. And this is what I found. While the classic hundreds of repeated images type of insect vision is a myth, they likely have a vastly different visual experience. I'm talking about insects. Compound eyes. Insect eyes have many lenses, each creating a tiny portion of the total picture. Motion detection. Insects may be far superior at detecting movement and changes in their environment compared to humans. Ultraviolet vision. Some insect eyes can see ultraviolet light, making flowers and other objects appear completely different to them. In summary, the way each species perceives the world is shaped by its unique sensory structures and brain processing mechanisms. There's no single objective reality, only a multitude of species-specific experiences. And this raises fascinating questions about the nature of reality and the limits of our own perception. So that's from my notes. So then what about this universe that this philosopher is talking about? Well, he's talking about a human model as experienced through human perception and the extension of the range of experience of human perception through instruments devised by the human mind and the interpretation thereof by the human mind, all the while not actually knowing what creates the mind. If we don't know what the mind is, then all these constructs are simply that, constructs of the human mind. And it is strange that we, as humans and the human mind, can actually decipher what other species may be experiencing. But that's a construct of the human mind, including what other species are. Insect doesn't know it's called an insect, and a giraffe doesn't know it's called a giraffe, and presumably by humans, and a snake doesn't know it's called a snake by humans. So this is how the word creates the flesh, in a sense, metaphorically speaking. So is any model true? No, no model is true. Whether it's a scientific model or a mythical concept or a religious concept, or ultimately even a philosophical concept. One thing that is good about philosophy is it does address ontology, the nature of being, and there are many schools of thought. Is it physical? It is mind and body, etc. I guess gravity is acting in a strange way. So is it physical? Is it mind, body, or even the physical world is a construct of the human mind for a species-specific mode of knowing and experience? I've raised these questions before, but I think I continue to raise them simply because, some apostles of scientism, such as Richard Dawkins and even Sam Harris and others, although Sam is a little bit on the fence, both sides, he doesn't know where to go. They all have a kind of a hubris and a kind of a arrogance about their point of view. I used to have that too, and I slowly realized that everything we say is totally is totally a human construct without knowing the nature of the mind that creates the human construct. And all I can do is keep going back to the non-dual traditions that say consciousness, or let's call it reality. If you don't like the word consciousness or awareness, let's call it reality. That reality knows itself by modifying itself into species specific minds, their perceptual activities and their interpretations of perceptual activities, leading ultimately to infinite versions of the universe. So, none of these versions are actually the real reality. The real reality is that which conceives, constructs, governs, and becomes the experience of these infinite universes through species specific minds, the biological apparatus that is the instrument of observation, perception, interpretation, and ultimately the projection of that as what we call reality. So, what about stars, galaxies, universes, and all these things? Interpretations also of the Schrodinger's wave function. Schrodinger's wave function is a mathematical construct in Schrodinger's mind that he convinced everybody else was true because it worked. It led to strange experiments, and it led to interesting interpretations of the quantum mechanics. It led to interesting technologies, including the technology that I'm using. Are these all part of the collective dreamscape? And I say to you, they are. We are fictional characters in the collective dreamscape. And one particular friend of mine, um, um, Rupert Spira, said it elegantly in spiritual terms when he said, we are all part of God's dream. But then what is God? Is that a human concept for another mode of knowing and experience? Because we try to conceptualize God and we cannot. Okay, as I mentioned before, Freeman Dyson said, God is what the mind becomes when it passes the threshold of our comprehension. And our comprehension, even though it's amazing that we can talk about other species, their modes of experience, perception. We can decode what we think happened at creation, the Big Bang, with lots of little gaps. But all of that, even that decoding of the universe, is dependent on human perception and extension of human perception through the human mind, interpretation of the human by the human mind, without knowing the biological source of the human mind. And I posit to you, there's no biological source of the human mind. The human mind is, in fact, what experiences biological activity and what interprets biological activity of other species. Exchange your cleverness for bewilderment. Get rid of our hubris, surrender to the unknown while keeping wonder and curiosity alive, and keeping developing great models of reality, because models of reality are maps of reality. And when we navigate those maps of reality, we experience different kinds of reality. It is wonderfully inexplicable. And this article has a good heading, but it is partially misleading. Okay. How does this alter how we experience life? Well, for me, it has actually taken away my attention from the banality of what we pay attention to. Gossip, who's doing what to whom, or who's doing what with whom, and who's saying what about whom, all of that appears very banal. And then all the the things that banality leads to are terrifying to the human experience: war, terrorism, eco destruction, extinction of species. Everything that we call the collective dream is being downgraded to a collective nightmare. But if we experience the wonder and mystery of existence, surrender to it while allowing our curiosity and wonder to flower, creating new models of reality, and ultimately understanding that the real reality is what gives us the experience of these constructs, and we have access to it through transcendence, then life becomes amazingly wondrous.